بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, inshallah, today we will start, and as I told you in the email last night, we will go over Bab al-Iddah, or the chapter on Iddah, the waiting period. Go over the chapter on Iddah, or the waiting period, and we are trying to inshallah, we'll do our best to finish it today. It's a longer one, and it has some intricacies, and it needs a lot of attention. So we'll just try to pay attention, because it is a little bit complicated, a little bit more complicated than some other chapters. Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said in his book Umdat al-Fiqh, or al-Umdah, under the chapter of al-Iddah, باب العدة ولا عدة على من فارقها زوجها في الحياة قبل المسيس والخلوة، لقول الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نكحتم المؤمنات ثم طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن فما لكم عليهن من عدة تعتدونها. There is no iddah waiting period binding on one whose husband left her during his life without having intercourse with her or seclusion. This is because of the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O you who believed, when you marry believing women and then divorce them before you have touched them, then there is not for you any waiting period to count concerning them, or there is no waiting period binding on them in this case. Okay. So today, inshallah, we will go over an introduction and talk about the wisdom of Iddah, and we'll talk about 4 types of women observing Iddah, and we'll talk about problematic scenarios such as the interruption of menstruation, the scenario of the missing husband, doubting whether there is pregnancy or not, and at the end of the chapter we will talk about the unfortunate scenario when a woman actually goes on to get married or to marry during her iddah. The first, the introduction. So in iddah, there is only one case after basically a separation, dissolution of marriage, regardless of the nature of that marriage, whether it was valid marriage, invalid marriage, regarding of its nature, there is always iddah, except in one scenario. A woman who did not consummate her marriage and her husband left her alive. The husband did not die. That's an important qualifier, because even if the woman did not consummate the marriage and the husband died, she is still required to observe a waiting period or iddah. So what is the one scenario?
If he dies without.
Because when we come to talk about the wisdom of iddah, we will basically point out that the wisdom of iddah is not limited to the verification of lack of pregnancy or assurance that there is no pregnancy. Iddah is not only about assurance of lack of pregnancy, because even and we will come to it right now, inshallah. But this is just the only scenario where a woman may not need, where a woman would not observe iddah. Her husband left her alive, her husband, separated from her without death, and the marriage was not consummated. Anything else, there is iddah. There is a waiting period. Divorced her, the marriage was annulled. So any one of the scenarios that I mentioned in the introduction. So it was a finalized marriage, finalized divorce, unfinalized divorce, court-enforced divorce, which is tatliq, annulment, which is fasq, khul', which is basically annulment / divorce, depending on which madhab you are. According to our madhab here, the Hanbali madhab that we're studying, it is an annulment initiated by the wife. According to the Jumhur, it is a divorce initiated by the wife or granted to the wife upon her request, or death. So any one of those scenarios, she is observing some type of iddah, and we will talk about the different variants of iddah. Now, so some sort of well, being politically correct, some people, some Muslims, think that now that we have modern technology and medical technology, we don't need to observe the iddah anymore. You just go to the doctor and get tested, and if you are not pregnant, you're free to marry. So this is basically like a simplistic approach to the matter that is really not, or that is incognizant of the wisdom of iddah or the wisdoms of iddah. It is counter to the fitrah of women, the genuine inclination, the natural indisposition of women to have serial relationships in this way, where she is moving from one husband to the next, without any break. So today her husband died, tomorrow she is with a different man. It doesn't, it would not be natural. And like I said before, the iddah allows the woman to take a little bit of a break, a time off for her own contemplation, reflection, consideration, so that she is not rushing into making decisions about another relationship while she is suffering from the emotional trauma or joy of separating from the previous husband by death or divorce or some other way. She is like given a little bit of time for her own reflection. It takes a little bit of time to think about what you need to do next. And there is also, in addition to the concept of assurance of lack of pregnancy, which is an extremely important one and an integral part of the wisdom of iddah, but there is also there are also other wisdoms. Like you could imagine that if a woman has like a couple of kids and their father died yesterday and mom is having a party next week because she's getting married, I think it's a little bit traumatic for the children. You could also think about the respect for the marital relationship itself. Some husband died, or like one marriage ended in divorce or annulment, or there has to be a little bit of a break. Now, the very expected question, why is it that the man is not observing iddah? Because the man, we already said that there are some differences between the man and the woman. The fact that Allah made it so is an indication that there are differences. That's all we need to sort of understand. You will not be able to empirically justify all of the Sharia, because that means that human beings, the repository of human knowledge is constant or changing? Changing all the time. So if you try to empirically justify the Sharia to one generation, our generation, that means that it was not possible to justify to previous generations 500 years ago, and your justification to this generation may not be necessarily adequate for people in the future, 500 years from now. So since the repository of human knowledge is changing, empirical justification or scientific justification of all the rules of Sharia is not necessarily prudent, warranted, or possible. But you will try to sort of reflect on the wisdoms. It is like a matter of reflection. These could be wisdoms. And as long as those wisdoms are not counter to the human indisposition, then you could certainly reflect on them. But if you're saying that this is going to be like math, it is not like math. So someone who does not recognize the difference between men and women will have difficulty in this regard, because for them, the only difference that is objective in their minds between men and women is that women get pregnant and men do not. If that is why there is a iddah for women, then there would have not been a difference between a woman whose husband died and a woman who got a divorce. But there is a difference, right? One woman observes a longer iddah than the other. If it is all about verification of the emptiness of the uterus or the womb, then the iddah would not be different between both women. We already know that in Islam, the husband is allowed up to 4 women, so that it is already culturally accepted that a man would have another wife, and his children will not be particularly devastated because father has another wife or gets another wife after their mother passes away or gets a divorce. Anyway, the wisdoms of Iddah are not limited to verification of emptiness of the womb. There is the respect for marriage. There is the fact that serial relationships are not good psychologically, emotionally for women. There is social considerations, emotional consideration, family considerations. There are kids that may be involved. So there are several reasons why women observe Iddah. Now, an additional reason may be the fact that serial relationships for women are not particularly healthy. Once you get into science, you get into trouble, because you could pull out a few studies and your opponent will pull out a few other studies. And then we get into, even when we get into the discussion about homosexuality, like I said to Daniel, that it may have been prudent of him not to mention scientific studies, because you just get into sort of justify the Islamic position and philosophical basis away from empirical science, because science is problematic. Scientific theories are changing, and there are always studies and counter studies, and science looks at things from one angle, from one perspective, and does not look at all of the perspectives. But it is still okay to mention that this may be a wisdom. Just mention it in passing. Don't make this the crux of the matter. No, it is not. There are many explanations that you could basically mention when you reflect on the wisdom of the waiting period, other than the harm of serial relationships. And that harm of serial relationships, it's basically based on some immune reactions to basically the womb being a receptacle of different types of semen on serial basis. And if someone says that, so what about the pregnant woman? She could give birth tomorrow and be clear after tomorrow to get married according to the four madhahib. And then the answer to this is that a pregnant woman will have already shed the entire lining of the uterus, So it may not be a problem. But again, at the same time, these things require a lot of studies, and it's a can of worms. Yes?
So basically the guideline is we can infer or read possible, we can argue certain wisdoms of these rulings, so long as they're not going to undermine the ruling itself, because they're not stated, right?
It does not undermine the ruling, and you should not be sort of inferring any aura of certainty about your reflections, because these are your reflections. العلة and الحكمة منصوصة أو مستنبطة. العلة or the hikmah could be either indicated in the text of Revelation itself or inferred. So if it is your own reflection, then just don't be so certain.
So can it be argued that one of the wisdoms, I'm not sure, maybe the fact it's something I'm not noticing, to ward off suspicion from the woman that the marriage was not dissolved by her so that she did immediately get with another partner?
There is actually no ceiling for your reflection on the wisdoms of Iddah. There is no ceiling. So whatever makes sense, you could say that it is part of the wisdom. Because the wisdom is not really practically legally consequential. So we will talk about the difference between the wisdom, which is al-hikmah, and al-illah, which is the defined, effective, or operative cause, which is and we'll talk about this now. But the wisdom is not legally consequential. So no matter how many wisdoms you come up with, the change of wisdom will not affect the ruling. It is not like a sort of a mutual relationship between the ruling and the wisdom, or a bilateral relationship, reciprocal relationship. It is a reciprocal relationship between the illah, the effective cause of the ruling, and the ruling. Therefore, when you talk about the illah, you have to be very watchful, very careful, because you are undermining the ruling if your designation of the illah is inaccurate. So then all of these women will observe Iddah except one scenario, a woman who got a separation during her husband's life without consummation, before consummation of pregnancy. فَمَا لَكُمْ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ عِدَّةٍ تَعْتَدُّونَهَا. Then there is no Iddah binding on her in this scenario. The next point here is the wisdom, and we talked about the wisdom of with the waiting period, and we said that it's not only verification of the emptiness of the uterus. We are sure that it is not only that, because had it been only that, the iddah of a woman whose husband died and a woman who got a divorce would have been the same, because the assurance of the emptiness of the uterus is the same in both cases, but there are differences, so we're sure that this is not limited to that, and then we could reflect on many wisdoms in this regard. The difference between illah and wisdom, so basically when you say that we can verify the emptiness of the uterus, or someone can say that we can verify the emptiness of the uterus, we don't need to wait for that long. The difference here is that they thought that their inferred illah or their understood illah is the only illah. But rulings do not only hinge on one illah necessarily. Rulings could hinge on multiple illah. Like let us say growing the beard. Someone says, for instance, growing the beard, the Prophet ordered growing the beard to distinguish ourselves from other nations, other religious groups, Jews and Christians. And since they grow their beards now, we may actually shave it to distinguish ourselves from them. But here, someone would have missed the fact that growing the beard is also meant to preserve the natural creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the natural creation. This is how Allah created people. And then تغيير خلق Allah is forbidden. The changing of the creation of Allah is forbidden unless there is like a permission, such as like, plucking the hair of the armpit or things like that. There is a permission, there is a permission. Without a permission, the default is prohibition. And you could also say that growing the beard serves the purpose of, making a distinction between men and women, and you could also say other things. So here, when you feel that the hukm, when you're mistakenly basically hold on to the qaida or the principle in usul al-fiqh, al-hukm yadur ma'a al-illa wujudan wa adama, or the hukm hinges on the illah, the ruling hinges on the illah, the ruling rotates with the illah, the ruling is dependent, contingent upon the illah, the ruling is coupled with the illah, whatever way you want to translate it. When you say this, you have to be careful that the illah that you are thinking of may not be the entire illah, because one ruling could actually be coupled with several causes. Illah is effective or operative cause. So you have al-illah and al-hikmah and al-sabab. Illah, hikmah, and sabab. And usually illah and sabab have been used interchangeably, but then the latter scholars have differentiated between illah and sabab, where illah would be translated as effective or operative cause, and sabab would be translated as cause. And the reason why they added operative or effective to illah is that illah is in the sphere of mu'amalat, not ibadat. Illah usually is in the sphere of mu'amalat, and sabab is in the sphere of ibadat. And since ibadat are not really, the wisdom of ibadat is not particularly comprehensible, like why do we pray Dhuhr of 2 rak'ah or 4 rak'ahs and at this particular time, and why do we fast Ramadan upon citing the hilal of this particular month of the year, all of these things, that there is no discernible, comprehensible cause. It's just that Allah told us to do so, so we do so. So in the area of ibadat but when it comes to the mu'amalat, then there would be much to reflect on. Why did Allah forbid, and even adat, much to reflect on. Why did Allah forbid wine? Why did Allah forbid riba? And so on. So why did Allah forbid riba? Then we could talk about the illah here, which will be the operative or effective cause. So we know for sure that Ramadan becomes binding on us, fasting Ramadan becomes binding on us upon sighting the moon. That's the cause of the obligation, or sabab. But this sabab is also not very comprehensible. So we call it sabab. And why did Allah forbid wine? Because of intoxication. Intoxication in this case would be called the illah, effective or operative cause. The hikmah is the overarching wisdom. It's the overarching wisdom. The hikmah is more abstract than the illah. More abstract means less defined, less fixated, less clear, more ambiguous, more vague than the illah. So the hikmah, the illah, for instance, in the qasr or shortening of the prayers in case of travel is travel. Right? Travel itself is the illah. The hikmah for qasr is removal of hardship. Now, you cannot take this hikmah, which is ill-defined, it's somewhat ill-defined, right? Removal of hardship is a little bit ill-defined versus travel. Travel is just well-defined cause. But removal of hardship is ill-defined. You cannot take this ill-defined wisdom and then extrapolate from it and expand, on its basis, expand the ruling on its basis. Because if removal of hardship, then I'm just a little bit tired, then I'll shorten the prayer, or there could be lots of scenarios where you think that you are in some sort of hardship. So for your purpose, think of the hikmah as inconsequential. It is only for conviction, for comfort, but for the advanced jurist's purpose, hikmah will be somewhat legally consequential. It is a little bit tricky, intricate, complex, so just don't get don't aim at this phase of your pursuit of knowledge to get to that point, because it is dangerous, hot, fiery, but we will, the hikmah, understanding the hikmah could be sometimes legally consequential. And the verifying scholars that did point this out previously, Tufi, for instance, in Sharh al-Rawda, his commentary on Rawdat al-Nadhr by Ibn Qudamah, pointed this out, and many verifying scholars pointed this out, that the hikmah is not completely beyond legal importance, or is not completely legally inconsequential. So when it comes to the scenarios, the difficult scenarios here, we will invoke the hikmah sometimes. But again, at the same time, very carefully and very precisely.
Not to hang up too much about it.
And the hikmah could be very abstract, in which case we will not touch it, we will not use it legally, and could be a little bit more defined, better defined. Not all the hikmah is extremely abstract. Yes?
Not to hang up too much about it, but can we say every illah is a hikmah, but not every hikmah is a illah?
If you use illah in this sense, yes. But if you use illah interchangeably with sabab, no. Because earlier, the scholars did not distinguish between illah and sabab. To them, they were the same thing. But the latter scholars who made a distinction between illah and sabab, then illah as an operative or effective cause, every illah will be a hikmah, but not every hikmah will be a illah. Is it clear? But sabab, you cannot say that the sabab is hikmah. Because, why do we fast upon sighting the moon of the 9th month of the Hijri calendar is really not, it's not comprehensible to be a hikmah. Yes?
So just to better understand it, hikmah is just a byproduct of the ruling. It doesn't cause for the ruling. An example somebody gave one time was when the...
No, it's not a byproduct. It is basically the philosophical foundation of the legislation.
So you can't use it to make a ruling?
No, you can't, because it is ill-defined. Because at the end of the day, it's very clear. At the end of the day, the concept of maqasid al-sharia, the objectives of sharia, is very ill-defined. If you want, keep in mind that understanding maqasid al-sharia and keeping maqasid al-sharia or the objectives of sharia in your mind, within sight, all the time, is extremely important for the jurist to not be a literalist or to not be too technical, where he would depart from the intent of the legislator or the maqsad of the sharia or the objectives of the sharia. But at the same time, the utility of the maqasid sharia, objectives of sharia, under which the hikmah is, part of that, the legal utility of them is certainly limited and has to be guided by, not limited, meaning small. I meant to say that is insufficient in your deduction of rulings. It is insufficient to be aware of the maqsad of ash-shari', or the intent of the legislator. Why is it insufficient? Because maqasid al-sharia are just common sense. And if we only need common sense, then we don't need religions to begin with. Because there is no difference. Like, I guarantee you that Christians and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists will completely agree with you on maqasid al-sharia. Atheists as well. So preservation of what?
Life.
The religion, maybe atheists will not agree on this. But, what? Life, liberty, that's according to Voltaire, right?
I'm not too sure, but it's on the dollar.
It's in what?
On the dollar.
Oh. No, yeah. So maqasid al-sharia is preservation of the religion, life, intellect, property, honor and lineage, or honor/lineage, or honor and lineage. But people will not disagree over this, except for the religion. Atheists will probably disagree. But the Christians and Jews would also agree that it is important to preserve the religion and preserve religious values. So in this case, if you're cognizant of maqasid al-sharia, you have not gone any farther than anyone out there in the street, like
Good citizen.
a good citizen, like a sensible human being. But Islam provided us with a detailed roadmap to the realization of those maqasid. It is not simple, it is not easy. All people agree on those maqasid. Capitalists and socialists, liberals and conservatives, everybody agrees. But then they disagree over the realization of those maqasid. And if you think that the Sharia or Allah did not provide you with a detailed roadmap, then it's your trouble. The point here is that wisdom is basically the philosophical foundation. You do want to keep it in mind, but you're not going to use it independent of the detailed evidences from the text of Revelation, the Quran, the Sunnah, Fatawa al-Sahaba, the principles of istinbat that were laid down by the earlier scholars, the matters of agreement, the proper qiyas, all of these issues. These are the tools that you're using while you are keeping in sight maqasid al-sharia. These are the milestones, the guidelines, the principles you'll go by, and your sight is fixated at maqasid al-sharia. You don't let this go off sight. It's there. But getting there is the issue, is the problem. As they say, the problem is in the details. Okay.
Sheikh, I'm sorry, one more. In the introduction, we didn't mention anything about like the wife leaving the house.
No, because we mentioned that in the previous chapter, right? Previous chapters.
Did we?
Yeah. The restoration of marriage, raja. Anyway, the wife will not be leaving the house unless this is a finalized divorce. If it is a finalized divorce, then the wife could leave the house. If it is unfinalized divorce or death, then the wife will not leave the house.
Now, what would happen if a man is married before he divorces?
Unless she needed to for like a valid purpose, then she could leave.
So if the man is married before, he divorces one, she's still in Iddah, and he goes and he marries another one. Can he?
He can Shafi'i wise. He cannot Hanafi wise.
So in essence, her Iddah is what? Then she has to finish the 3 months, but there is no raja. She leaves the house. Logically, think of it. He has 4 wives.
Yes.
He divorces one of them. Now there is Iddah there, and there is also potential for raja. However, he goes and he marries a 4th one, a different 4th one. So there is no raj'a for her.
No, if it is finalized,
No, not finalized.
It
okay.
becomes finalized as soon as he marries the fourth.
He got married to another one.
So that
No, he
finalizes.
cannot marry another one.
So he
If
has to
if
wait
the
for-
iddah, if the marriage, if the divorce was unfinalized, he cannot marry another one. But if the divorce was finalized, then there is like a disagreement. Yeah. The 4 types of women observing iddah. Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, وَالْمُعْتَدَّاتِ يَنْقَسِمْنَ أَرْبَعَةَ أَقْسَامٍ. The women observing the iddah waiting period belong to one of 4 divisions. إحداهن أولاة الأحمال فعدتهن أن يضعن حملهن ولو كانت حاملا بتوأمين لم تنقضي عدتها حتى تضع الثانية منهما. والحمل الذي تنقضي به العدة وتصير به الأمة أم ولد ما يتبين فيه أو ما يتبين فيه خلق الإنسان. The women observing the iddah waiting period belong to one of 4 divisions. First, those who are pregnant, their iddah is until they give birth. If she has twins, her iddah is not over until she gives birth to the second. The pregnancy, whose end results in the conclusion of the iddah, and which results in the slave woman getting the status of the mother of child, is that which has discernible human features. So the 4 types of women observing the iddah will be pregnant women, the second type is widows. The third type is basically women who are menstruating. The fourth type is pre and post. Pre and post the phase of menstruation. So postmenopausal, premenarcheal. Premenarcheal, postmenopausal. So one thing that you really need to remember to make this thing easier is this. Pregnant gets a first pass. Whenever you think about, because it's sometimes they overlap, right? She could be pregnant and widow. She could be widow and menstruating. She could be widow and pre or post. So sometimes the woman belongs to 2 different categories. Which category will you go by? Give the first pass to pregnancy. And that's according to the 4 madhahib. There used to be some disagreement over this between the Sahaba, but we're past that disagreement because the 4 madhahib agreed that first pass will be given to pregnancy even when pregnancy conflicts with death. If pregnancy will still get the first pass. So ask, is she pregnant? And if she is pregnant, don't ask about anything else. Her iddah ends upon childbirth. Second question, after someone tells you no, she is not pregnant, then you ask the second question. What is the second question? Did her husband die, or she got a divorce or separation in his life? And if the answer to the second question that her husband died, don't ask about anything else. Nothing else. And all of this, we're talking about the scenario of the free woman, because the other scenario is pretty irrelevant to our times. I'm not even translating those scenarios in my book because they're quite irrelevant to our times. There is an appendix on the issue of slavery that is quite comprehensive. Throughout the book, I'm not referring to those issues. But so the scenario that we're talking about here is, the second question that you will need to ask is, did her husband die or not? If her husband died, then you don't need to ask any other questions. Her iddah is 4 months and 10 days. Now, the answer to the second question is no, her husband did not die. No, her husband did not die. Then you will ask whether she is getting periods or not getting periods. And if she is getting periods, her iddah will be by the number of periods. And then under this category, then you will ask, was this annulment or divorce? And if it is annulment, then it is 1 period. If it is divorce, then it's 3 periods, so on. She is not getting her periods, then we fall back to the last default, which is a woman who gets the divorce or separation from her husband while he is still alive. She is not pregnant, and she does not get periods. And that's very simple, 3 months. Okay. So the first question that you'll ask about is pregnancy. Second question you'll ask about is whether it was death or or some other type of separation. Yes?
No, I'm asking about the pregnancy. If she loses her baby before the second month or the third month, would she go back to normal iddah?
If she loses her baby in the second or the third month. That is why Ibn Qudamah said ما يتبين أو يتبين فيه خلق الإنسان. If whatever she will deliver, does it have discernible human features or not?
Second month, no. Second month and third month, no. It will start.
Yeah. Embryogenesis is complete by 56 days from conception. So at 56 days of gestational age. Do you know what is that from conception? You remove, you subtract 14 days, and it would be about 42 days from conception. But at any rate, this is what they needed to say, because that is how much technology they had. It is basically to look at the child and recognize whether he has discernible human features or not. My own position is that in our times, you can actually ask the expert if this was an aborted pregnancy or just any type of blood clots coming out. And if the expert tells you that this was a pregnancy, then you apply the rulings of pregnancy to it.
Then it's ended her
and then that by abortion or childbirth, her iddah ends. Her iddah ends upon basically the emptiness of the womb or rahim by childbirth or abortion. This is not a matter of disagreement. The scholars always recognize abortion to end. He said, ما يتبين فيه خلق الإنسان, whatever has discernible human features. Even if he was not born alive, if he has discernible human features, then the iddah ends by this. But what I'm trying to say is that discernible human features now could be replaced by testing, expert opinion. Because usually they deferred also the discernible human features to the midwife. And if the midwife says this was a pregnancy, then we will take her word. Now you just defer it to the physician.
Chip,
Yes.
discernible human features means physically, no?
Yes. Or
Why
what?
do you need testing?
Huh?
Why would you need testing?
You can say
Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah did not say testing. He said discernible human features. I am adding the testing part. So if you do not want to confuse yourself, cross over what I said and keep Ibn Qudamah's statement. What I said applies to modern times, and scholars may disagree over it. The scholars who do not want. So, yeah. So if there are scholars who do not want to basically incorporate any aspects of modern human life into the Sharia. So you don't want forensic medicine, you don't want DNA testing, you don't want any of that mess. You just want to keep it as is. Now, this would create a lot of problems, but I can't really condemn them. I cannot condemn that approach, although it would create a lot of problems, and it will make our judiciary or judicial system extremely out of date. But it's fine. If that's what your approach to things, that's fine. I'm not talking to you, by the way. I'm just talking about
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say someone divorces his wife and it's not finalized yet, and then he dies. Then she start like 40 days as if he never divorced her, or what? Like it's not finalized and she still live with him. 1 month later, he died. Then her status now became a widow or became
a widow.
divorcee. And she starts then the 4 months from that point of death?
From his death, yes.
Okay. How about the inheritance?
She will get the inheritance.
As if he never divorced her.
As if he's never divorced her. Unfinalized. The next, so you asked first about pregnancy, and if she is pregnant, her iddah ends with the childbirth. And that is according to the four madhahib, and there used to be some disagreement between the Sahaba. No more disagreement. The four madhahib agreed that pregnant women, their iddah will end upon childbirth. Why was there a disagreement to begin with? Because of two general statements in the Quran. وَأُولَاتُ الْأَحْمَالِ أَجَلَهُنَّ أَنْ يَضَعْنَ حَمْلَهُنَّ وَالَّذِينَ يَتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعَشْرًا. So you have one ayah that says that those who die and leave behind women in their waiting period, they should wait around for 4 months and 10 days. And then another ayah says, وَأُولَاتُ الْأَحْمَالِ أَجَلَهُنَّ أَنْ يَضَعْنَ حَمْلَهُنَّ. And for pregnant women, their term is up until they give birth. So if you had two generalities, and so some of the Sahaba said this is general and this is general. And in order for them to basically employ, because al-i'mal awla min al-ihmal, employment of all evidences is preferable to ignoring some evidences. So the only way we do i'mal of all the evidences is to ask her to wait around until the end of the longer term, not the shorter term. Because if you ask her to wait around until the end of the shorter term, you're only doing i'mal of one ayah. But if you ask her to wait around until the end of the longer term, you're doing i'mal of both ayat. You're employing both ayat. Because al-adna yadkhul fi al-a'la. Al-asghar yadkhul fi al-akbar. The shorter term will be included under the longer term. So if she waits for the longer term, she would have ended the shorter and the longer term employed all ayat. And that is, very valid way of thinking, line of thinking from the Sahaba radwanullah alayhim. Had we not had Hadith Abu Sanabil ibn Ba'kak, where the Prophet ﷺ told the widow who gave birth that you have become halalti idh wada'ti hamlaki, you have become halal or free to marry when you gave birth. And then she said, وَأَمَرَنِي بِالتَّزَوُّجِ إِنْ بَدَى لِي, and he commanded me to marry if I prefer to do that. Then it would have been very complicated, because that line of thinking from the Sahaba who said that she should wait for the longer term is very valid. The other Sahaba, like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, said أتجعلون عليها التغليظ ولا تجعلون لها الرخصة. So he said, you're you're taking the stricter position for her both ways and not taking the easier one, which is the shorter term. So stricter position both ways, meaning if her pregnancy ended after 4 months and 10 days, you're telling her to wait until the pregnancy ends. If the pregnancy ended before 4 months and 10 days, you're telling her to wait 4 months and 10 days. So both ways, you're taking the harder position for her, the stricter position for her. And those Sahaba, without invoking the hadith into the discussion or the discourse yet, those Sahaba had a very valid line of thinking as well, because they felt that Ulat al-Ahmal, pregnant women, is more specific to a particular scenario than widows. Because widows is a little bit more general. Pregnant women is more specific to the scenario where she is actually pregnant. Although they both sound general, but those Sahaba chose that the case of pregnancy is more specific, and whatever is more specific takes precedence. So they employed the more specific ruling, which is not for pregnancy. Discussion is over because of the hadith of Abu Sanabil ibn Ba'akak and the Prophet ﷺ telling the widow who was pregnant and gave birth, you're done upon childbirth. So that is why the 4 Imams chose that position. The next one, okay, so the pregnant women, we said we're done with the pregnant women, right? And discernible human features, or in our contemporary times, expert opinion, testing, and so on. The second scenario, those, Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, الثاني التي توفي أزواجهن يتربصن بأنفسهن 4 أشهر وعشرا والإماء على النصف من ذلك وما قبل المسيس وما بعده سواء. Second, those whose husbands died, they wait for 4 months and 10 days. This is the same if death happened before or after consummation. So the second scenario is what? Death. And death, in the case of death, it does not matter whether the marriage was consummated or not. Doesn't matter whether the marriage was consummated or not. The only exception from the case of death is pregnancy. So pregnancy is the largest default. Is the first pass is the sort of the second is death. Death, there is only the exception of pregnancy. Otherwise, the 4 months and 10 days apply. The designation of 4 months and 10 days applies to all women, all widows. Then Imam Ibn Qudamah proceeded to addressing the third type of women observing the waiting period. He said, الثالث المطلقات من ذوات القروء يتربصن بأنفسهن 3 قروء وقرء الأمة حيضتان. Third, divorcees who menstruate, they wait around for 3 qur's. What is a qur'?
Menstruation cycle? Menstrual cycle?
The qur' is the menstrual cycle according to Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad. Qur' is the period between the 2 menstruations according to Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i, and a variant position in the Hanbali method. What would be the difference between the 2 scenarios anyway?
7 days.
Yeah, about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, or one menstrual period. Why? Because, let us say that this is hayd, tuh, hayd, tuh, hayd, tuh, hayd, tuh. Okay, so he should divorce her in which case? In here. He divorced her here. So if he divorced her here, the Hanafis and Hanbalis will tell her, you will be halal here, H plus A. When will the Shafi'is and Malikis tell her she will be halal?
After.
Here. That is M plus S. Why? Because the Malikis and Shafi'is will count this one as the first period. Even if divorce happened here, they will count this as the first period. So this is 1 to them, 2 to them, and 3. When does 3 end? Here. When her period starts, here. That is the end for the Malikis and Shafi'is. What about the Hanafis and Hanbalis? They want 3 qur's. So for them,
The beginning of the
this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. When does the third end? Here, when the period ends. Once she starts to become pure, then it ends. So it's a very small difference, but so I would support the Hanafi Hanbali position, because anyway she gets if she is free to marry here, she is still in her period, so it's, I mean you could marry in your period, but you can't consummate the marriage. Anyway, the next point. And this is a disagreement that is extremely hard to settle. Al-Qur'a is a homonym, And homonyms, when you have a homonym and you don't have any other corroborative evidence to support one another's position, lafd al-mushtarak, homonym is a lafd al-mushtarak. Lafd al-mushtarak creates a lot of difficulty and confusion because it is linguistically the matter cannot be settled. Because we could sit down and talk about how Qur' meant to the Arabs during the time of the revelation, menstruation, and how Qur' meant to the Arabs during the time of the revelation, purity between 2 menstruations. So the matter will not be settled linguistically. So if you don't have any other corroborative evidence, and then certainly there is just like an sort of an enormous discussion, but at the end of the day, the positions are very comparable in strength. Yes?
If there's a person who is not following a particular mazhab or any mazhab, they can choose.
In a matter like this, a person can choose, but they should not, switch around. They just choose and that's it. But in all honesty, the person will follow the guidance of their mufti. Their mufti chooses for them. And if their mufti is equivocal, then they can choose. If this matter is the disagreement is too strong to be decided, then they could choose. The other scenario here, the one that is left, is the fourth scenario. اللائي يئسن من المحيض فعدتهن 3 أشهر واللائي لم يحضن والأمة شهران. Fourth, those who are postmenopausal or premenarcheal. Menarche is haid. Menarche is not puberty, because puberty in English or in medicine is different from puberty for us in fiqh. Puberty is different from menarche. And it's important, if you are a translator, that you pay attention to these differences. Puberty and menarche are 2 different things. For us, in fiqh, they mean the same thing. In English or in medical terminology, they are 2 different creatures completely. Puberty could happen 1.5 years to 2 years prior to menarche, which is the beginning of the periods. Okay, so that's the third type, the last type. The last type is women who do not. And for those women, it is easy. فعدتهن 3 أشهر. Their period is 3 months. Huh?
For death?
Hmm?
For the death of the husband?
No, we said that death is second pass. Pregnancy first, death second, and then everything else. You ask the first question, pregnant, it ends with childbirth. You ask the second question, her husband died, 4 months and 10 days. The exception is pregnant. No other exception. Okay, so how do you calculate the 3 months? It is there in your handout. The calculation of the 3 months is in your handout. How do you calculate the 3 months? If he died on Muharram 14th, if he died on Muharram 14th,
For pre-post, he doesn't die.
huh? I'm sorry. Sorry. Thank you. But if he died, then it would be 4 months and 10 days, and it applies to. But let's say that he did not die; it was a divorce, so we're counting 3 months. And this is so this is the beginning of the year. This is Muharram 1st, end of Muharram, Safar, Rabi' Awal, Rabi' Thani. So this is this is Muharram, where her husband died on the 14th of Muharram. Okay. She got a divorce on the 14th of Muharram. But we could still say her husband died and then count 4 months and 10 days. But anyway, let's stick to the 3 months. She got a divorce on the 14th of Muharram. Okay. Well, Muharram this year could be 29 or 20 or 30 days, right? Okay. So whatever is left of Muharram, depending on the moon sighting, will be either 15 or 16 days, right? So she doesn't need to really worry about the length of Safar. This is Safar.
1 month.
Yeah, because complete months, it will be just 1 month, one block. So that is 1 month, we're done. We don't really count the days. Here is Rabi' al-Awwal, and it is also 1 month, and you don't need to worry about anything. And here is Rabi' al-Thani. Okay, so this is 1 month completed. And this is 1 completed. So we need to finish our third, and the third basically will depend on the number of days here that were left of Muharram after he divorced her or she got a divorce. 15, 16 days. If it was 15 days, then she will add 15 here from Rabi' al-Awwal, and if it was 16 days, she will add 14. She needs to complete 30. Okay.
So is the idea always, it is 90 days versus what it doesn't?
No, not 90 days. It is, the idea is 2 months and 30 days. 2 months complete from Hilal to Hilal, from moon sighting to moon sighting, plus 30 days. If, she was in Iddah for 15 days in Muharram, before Muharram ended, she will have 15 days to make up from Rabi' al-Awwal. If it was 16 days, she has 14 days.
Can't we use the normal calendar?
Can you use the normal calendar?
Like February, March.
The February and March? No, you can't. No.
Because the Ashur, it's like 4 Ashur and 10. So 4 Ashur can be 29 days, it could be 30 days.
Yeah. No, you can't. It is all Hijri calendar, except in some cases where it is impossible to use the Hijri calendar in calculation of zakah for big companies and things of that nature. Then we do the corrections Because like here, big companies, they do their inventory every Gregorian year or calendar, then it is hard for them to do it in the Hijri year. But this is a different story. This is a different story. But it is always the Hijri calendar. The next, okay, so these are the default normal scenarios. Nothing too weird yet. You want to get into the weird scenarios?
So Sheikh, and we can return her in any date between.
We'll get into some of the weird scenarios. If they take a break for 5 minutes? Okay. Yeah, and then we will get into the abnormal scenarios. Inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, so these are the defaults for the Iddah. There are certain scenarios which are a little bit more complicated than this. And Imam Ibn Qudamah, rahimahullah, he started to address those scenarios, and he said, وَيُشْرَعُ التَّرَبُّصُ مَعَ الْعِدَّةِ فِي ثَلَاثَةِ مَوَاضِعٍ أحدها إذا ارتفع حيض المرأة لا تدري ما رفعه فإنها تتربص 9 أشهر ثم تعتد عدة الآيسات وإن عرفت ما رفع الحيض لم تزل في عدة حتى يعود الحيض فتعتد به. He said it is prescribed to wait beyond the Iddah in 3 situations. First, if the menstruation ceases without a known cause, in this case, she will wait around for 9 months. Then she will observe the Iddah of the postmenopausal woman. If she knew what caused the cessation of her menstruation, she will continue to observe the Iddah until her menstruation resumes. Okay, so now, so she is a woman who usually menstruates. She got a divorce from her husband, and then she had 1 period, and then that's it. She's not having periods. 1 month goes by, 2 months go by. Where is my period? No period. She's stuck now. So what could she do? So here there are 2 different scenarios. We either know what stopped her menstruation, or we do not know what stopped her menstruation. And if we know what stopped her menstruation, Imam Ibn Qudamah said she waits around until that reason ends, and then she resumes her Iddah by the menstrual periods. She doesn't know what stopped her menstruation. He said 9 months, that's the period of pregnancy, and then she starts to count 3 months afterwards. Okay. Don't get worked up over this. Nowadays, the laws in most Muslim countries, sort of lightened the burden of the woman. And in the Amjad's family code, we chose the position that I will read for you now in both cases. In both cases. Here is what it says in the family code of Amjad, Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. When the husband's looking, wait a second. That's not this. Anyway, we said that she should verify the pregnancy there is no pregnancy, and then 3 months would be her Iddah. Here's what is said here. She will observe a waiting period of 3 months after confirming with physicians that she is not pregnant. That's basically it. In this case, this is one example where I told you that the hikmah is sometimes invoked by the scholars at a certain level, or and certainly this Amjad code. This code was discussed over 2 conferences. 2 of the General Assembly conferences, which basically is not the Imam Workshop Conference. It is the General Assembly Conference where scholars get from different parts of the world, and you have like a good number of scholars, faqihs, 30, 40, 50 scholars of faqihs sitting together discussing these issues one by one, article by article. Anyway, Now, to be honest, also the resolutions are made on the basis of majority, simple majority. Just to let you know. But at the end of the day, a simple majority of scholars at this caliber is significant.
Chef,
Yes.
so 3 months from the last period or from the divorce?
No, 3 months from verification of the emptiness of the womb.
Which would happen after she would.
Yes, yes, yeah. And in this case, we would have shown respect to the two main factors here in this. It's a break between two relationships for the woman, respect for the marital relationship, avoidance of serial relationships without, break, all of that stuff. This is respected by the 3 months that she would wait around. And the emptiness of the uterus has been verified already by the expert. So that is the first one. So unless you do not accept this approach to law, what you want to remember is that nowadays women who have such difficulty will have a way out by getting tested, verifying that there is no pregnancy, and waiting around for 3 months only. The second scenario, which is even more problematic, is the wife of the missing husband. So the husband goes missing, and in America it actually happens just like, during the time of the Sahaba, what are the chances that the husband would go missing?
Disappears.
Yeah. So, the one scenario where it happened during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, the man went out to pray Isha and didn't come back, is like a very interesting scenario. But nowadays, just people go missing, like left and right. Particularly when the marriage is not documented and all of these things. Okay, so the husband goes missing. Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, المفقود الذي فقد في مهلكة أو من بين أهله فلم يعلم خبره تتربص 4 سنين ثم تعتد للوفاة وإن فقد في غير هذا كالمسافر للتجارة ونحوها لم تنكح حتى تتيقن موته. So he said the missing husband who was lost in a dangerous or perilous situation or place and his whereabouts and condition are unknown, his wife would wait for 4 years and then she will observe the iddah of the death of the husband, which is 4 months and 10 days. If he was missing in different situations, such as the traveler for business or the likes, basically it is not a perilous or dangerous situation, then she will not marry until she becomes certain of his death. And in this case, when does she become certain of his death? If we actually become certain that he died, or if he, after 90 years from his birth, after 90 years from his birth.
The husband's birth?
Yes.
The husband's birth. Then she may at that time be like pretty old, right? She would not be interested anyway.
She
Huh?
can ask for a divorce from the court.
At that time.
Yes, if he is missing if he just left the country.
Okay. So you want the contemporary fatwa? Okay.
No, because many of the Arab.
So according to the
some
Amjad,
of the husbands just left to another country and.
the world has become much different nowadays, and certainly the husband could shoot her an email or text her or something.
I am dead.
I might not
because of this, I mean, unless he is, you know, well, there are certain scenarios, particularly in Muslim countries, where you could like disappear and then they find out like 20 years later that you are in some jail somewhere in some place. But at any rate, according to the Amjad's family code, when the husband's location or place of residence is unknown and the wife is harmed by that, the affair is referred to an Islamic judiciary to consider separating between her and her husband due to harm. تطليق للضرر. That would follow exhausting the efforts to reach him, demanding his return to his wife, or relocating her to him. So the court is not doing this as a knee-jerk type reaction, but the court is exhausting the effort to locate the husband, identify his place, and then if they cannot, and she is harmed by his absence, then she will be divorced.
And the traditional...
That's court-enforced divorce, yes.
In the traditional opinion, you said 4 years. How did it come to this 4 years? Was there...
Because Ibn Abi Shaybah reported this from Umar radiallahu anhu, and it was also reported from, you know, other Sahaba. And according to some other reports from Ali and from other Sahaba, it was indefinite. It was basically waiting until she finds out, she becomes certain of his death. The thing is that the report in Ibn Abi Shaybah from Umar, so keep in mind, there is nothing traceable to the Prophet, to Allah or his messenger concerning this case. Nothing is traceable. There is one authentic, not one weak report from the Prophet that she waits indefinitely until she's certain of his death. Very weak, not acceptable in matters of rulings. But there is nothing that is authentically traceable to Allah or his messenger concerning this case. The Sahaba encountered this problem. Some of the Sahaba, Umar radiallahu anhu, encountered this problem. This man who went out to pray Aisha and did not come back. So Umar radiallahu anhu said 4 years. But the problem even in this is that the scholars took this position and applied it to a scenario different from the scenario of Umar. Perilous travel is where they applied it. But someone who went out to pray Aisha, that is not really perilous. That is not dangerous. That is not mahlaka. But they applied it to perilous travel, and in non-perilous or non-dangerous travel, they chose the position of the other Sahaba, which is waiting indefinitely until she becomes certain of his death. Just move on. Nowadays, in Muslim countries, in laws, you know, the Amjad family code, everything, she's not waiting for that long. They may give different periods, 6 months on the basis of, you know, Umar radiallahu anhu requiring men to report back within 6 months, and some chose 4 months, some chose, you know, according to the Amjad family code, she will get a divorce with a darar for her, which is once he's absent and we cannot verify his location, we exhausted the efforts to verify his location, she gets the divorce and then she starts her iddah.
So there's no specific time?
Well, it has to be a sensible period, you know. It has to be a sensible period. Like she would not be, certainly she would not be reporting to court. Then the next day her husband does not show up at home. So it has to be a sensible period. And then after she reports to court, the court will basically go through due process to find out where he is.
What about jail?
She can request the talaq lid-darar. She can request divorce for harm. Divorce for harm. Jail is much easier because we know where he is. And if she is unable to wait around for him, she can request divorce for harm. Tatliq lid-darar. That's a court-enforced divorce. Yes?
Would this give a reason or a good reason to use the secular laws and not Islamic laws, just for the logistics. I mean, if she goes to the sheikh and the sheikh would tell her wait 6 months and so on and so forth, if she goes to the court, they will claim that he's abandoned husband and they're gonna go after his social security, and there is a lot of measures and enforcement that the masjid or the imam or the legislature, the Islamic
The Amja family code said that we will give her a divorce, a court-enforced divorce. Why are you guys going out to...
He's saying they have access to resources to track him or to...
The enforcement...
Oh, certainly. And then the Amja family code does not say that you will not use the local jurisdiction or local law enforcement in pursuit of that husband. You will report it to the law enforcement to find out where he is. But in terms of the court-enforced divorce, the imams will do it. And the right, civilized, authentic way of doing this is that where you have a panel of imams that are well versed in the law.
Is it firmly legislated the amount of time like a man can spend away from his family? And is that something that will be taken into account in making rulings like this?
Yes, 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah. So without mutual acceptance, 6 months. With mutual acceptance, as much as they agree on. Because الحق لا يعدوهما. If there is like a man and his wife and they decided that I will send you with the kids to Karachi, for instance, so that the kids learn Quran and stuff like this. I will work here, send you money. I can't really afford to go there and visit you for 3 years. Well, she likes it, he likes it. Who are you to say no?
Is there a penalty?
There is no penalty. If mutual agreement.
It's not mutually agreed upon.
If they have not mutually agreed, then she can demand that he comes back to her within 6 months. 6 months, yes.
Can she do it like before the 6 months is over? Can she try to request the divorce? She can't wait that long, 6 months. And if exhausted their efforts to try to watch one.
She can request khula, yes.
There's an influx of Syrian refugees in neighboring countries, like in Sham or like in Jordan, for instance. And there's a growing number of people from Khalij, specifically Saudi, that say they go to Jordan and they would take advantage of the situation of the people in the camps and marry someone's daughter that would be, let's say, young, and because they needed the money, etc. And he would marry them, and then be there for a month, let's say in Amman, and then say I'm going back to Saudi to make you an iqama, and then he'll disappear, and the woman's pregnant or not, and then
Well, these are unfortunate situations, but they don't have much to do with the law. They have to do with people's habits and customs and people's greed and stuff like that. But the law is pretty straightforward. I mean, if he disappeared, if he is here and he disappeared, keep in mind these rulings, none of them is traceable authentically to Allah and His Messenger. Was the ijtihad of the Sahaba. We must respect the ijtihad of Sahaba. Yet the world has changed so much. And because of the changes in the world, the contemporary laws and the fiqh assemblies and the different bodies of jurists, they lighten the burden for the woman whose husband is missing. She will get a divorce for her if she takes her case to the court. The next case is doubting the presence of pregnancy. Imam Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said, الثالث إذا ارتابت المرأة بعد انقضاء عدتها لظهور أمارات الحمل لم تنكح أو لم تنكح حتى تزول الريبة فإن نكحت أو نكحت لم يصح النكاح وإن ارتابت بعد نكاحها لم يبطل نكاحها إلا إن علمت أنها نكحت وهي حامل. Third, if the woman doubted the end of her waiting period after its conclusion because of the appearance of signs of pregnancy, then she would not marry until the doubt ends. If she married, her marriage is invalid. if she started to have the doubts after she married, the marriage will not be voided unless she came to be certain that she got married while being pregnant. Okay, so here in this scenario, the woman, okay, so so she had the 3 periods and the ended. And she's here, for instance. And here, she starts to, feel something is moving inside or whatever, like signs of pregnancy. She starts, whatever signs of pregnancy. So,
Yes, it is.
it's not possible? Oh, the 3 periods could have been threatened abortion. So the blood could have been threatened abortion. Abortion that was not completed. Yeah. So it is possible. So in this case, well, she starts to feel some signs of pregnancy here. And what should she do? She should wait around and not get married until she verifies whether she is pregnant or not. Clear? Yeah. Agreement. Okay. Well, if she actually got married here, and then she starts to doubt the pregnancy here, well, that's too soon, I guess. So then that's a little bit of a problem. Her marriage will not be voided because in Sharia, in general, shak does not negate certainty. What is certain now is that she got married, and it is a valid marriage because when she got married, she had already been done with her period, so that is a certain marriage, a certain valid marriage. Now she's developing doubts, and the doubt does not basically override certainty in Sharia. So she will continue with her marriage until she gives birth to the child. When she gives birth, but wait a second. Except if she came to become certain that she did actually get married while pregnant, then that marriage will be invalidated, will be voided, because she got married while she is still in her period. Now, if she starts to feel the doubt here, she got married here, starts to feel the doubt here, and then she gave birth to a child 5 months after 5 months, and she gave birth here.
Can't be from the second.
Can it be from the second? Okay. We will go over the default first, and then we will discuss some contemporary intricacies. It cannot be from the second because it happens.
No, I'm just saying 6 months.
It cannot be from the second because it has not been 6 months yet from marriage. What?
Is it impossible?
Well, we said we will go over the default first, and then we will discuss some intricacies, contemporary intricacies. Let's go over the default because it is important that you know the default. It's clear in your mind, so you're not confused when we discuss the intricacies. The default, which Imam Ibn Qudamah mentioned here, is that if this happened 6 months, before 6 months from her from the second marriage, this has to be from the first husband. The second marriage will be voided. The child will be attributed to the first husband. If this happened after 6 months from the second marriage and 4 years from her separation from the first one, then this is for sure from the second marriage. Why? Because pregnancy in the Hanbali madhab cannot last longer than 4 years. So after 6 months from the second and 4 years from separation from the first, that is confirmed from the second, attributed to the second, her second marriage is valid, she doesn't need to worry about it. If this delivery happened more than 6 months after the second and less than 4 years from the separation from the first, then we have a problem, because it could be from either one in the Hanbali method. Shortest period of pregnancy in the madhahib is 6 months, agreement in the madhahib. But this consensus that was reported, and I have a paper on this, is reported about the viability of the product of pregnancy before 6 months. In their times, it was not viable.
Never survive.
Can never survive. They did not, and there are certain statements that I quoted from different scholars. They did not say that it cannot be born alive. They said that it does not have a stable life. So it could be born alive, but then it would not have a stable life. In our times, can you keep a 5 months old, 5 months of gestational age, alive through medical measures? Yes, you can. Then in this case, we will just add this caveat to the ruling, unless the expert physician deemed the child to be born extremely premature. Then in this case, we will not rule out the possibility of it being from the second pregnancy, if it was born 5 months after the second pregnancy. Okay? The 4 years concept, longest duration of pregnancy is 4 years. Is there anything authentically traceable to Allah or His Messenger concerning this issue? No. So now the scholars, and keep in mind, because you have never studied the history of law in any other nation, you would have seen the excellence of our history of legislation and then sensibility of our history of legislation had you studied the history of law in other nations. Because peculiar things like this, people 1400 years ago, when they had to encounter certain peculiar scenarios, they had to rationalize, and they had limited tools. So some said that the longest duration for pregnancy is 4 years, because there were incidents where a woman got pregnant 4 years after this, and we can't really accuse her of impropriety, then we'll just accept it as being from the previous marriage, and these incidents, case reports, waqa'a a'yan, will go into the machine of legal deduction, right or not? Yes, these are case reports. Case reports, even in medical literature, are considerable.
Can you explain more what is the 4 years?
4 years is the longest duration of pregnancy. So the scholars said if a man dies, and a woman after 4 years gives birth to a child, this child could still be his kid, because the pregnancy could have lasted 4 years in her womb. So in some form of an inert stage, or keep in mind, this is not logically impossible, by the way. Is it logically impossible? Huh?
Maybe to comprehend.
No, you would be crazy if you think this is logically impossible. What would prevent like a sperm from being an inert phase of existence?
For 4 years?
You get an alive nurture inside. Logically, yeah, because you are basically a captive of your modern repository of knowledge and information. But on a logical, philosophical level, what is the problem? Okay, no. I ask you a question, and I can embarrass everybody in this audience, even the physicians. So what is the longest duration of pregnancy? And I challenge you, dare anyone here say an accurate number? Dr. Todd, what is the longest duration of pregnancy?
No, I'm just.
No, because you guys are like, you're not being logical. Because you are captive, you're imprisoned by your repository of information, which is flawed, which is inaccurate. Tell me, what is the longest duration of pregnancy? Yes?
On that, more on the cellular level. Yeah, we do this in the lab all the time, suspended development.
Huh?
Suspended development.
Oh, suspended development, that's what
You can suspend cells in a certain way, then take them out, you can even freeze them, take them out later on, whatever the case is. So suspended development.
Well, they're planning to keep cells for like genius people and so on for thousands of years, so that you could have cloning in the future, so that.
No, I'm talking about even more progressing, to actually let the cells develop a certain stage, right? They're duplicating, and then you can stop them, right? Whether in an environment, but as long as you keep nurturing them, they're fine.
Yeah.
So there's no limit?
No, it didn't say that.
There is no logic, you think that whoever said 4 years was illogical. You come up with a number that is accurate.
No shit.
You come up with a number.
I don't think anybody here disagrees with that, but I think it's just to comprehend.
Like post those, sperm banks, and after 40 or what, the husband and wife, they store the stuff, for whatever it is, and after his death, she decides she wants to have. That is a confirmed, child for his, and what's legitimate, what's logically the parentage, I don't know. However, from a practicality, carrying a child, Allah says it's 9 months. 9 months, give or take, whatever it is, lunar month.
Okay, we'll come to this disagreement. However, this is not on logical or philosophical basis, because logically it is perfectly fine within the right environment that a sperm or a cell could survive for a very long time in some inert phase or stage of existence. It is extremely logical. Wallahi, it is extremely logical.
It does exist in certain organisms. It does exist in certain organisms. Once they are born as babies, if there's no nutrition, they suspend growth for at least 4 months. And then once you provide nutrition, they continue growing, and then they go through the childhood, youth, and then adult stage. So it does exist, not it doesn't. It is possible, cellularly speaking.
Okay. So, any one of you wants to give me an accurate number?
No, we are asking, and we are seeking the knowledge.
Oh, no.
I
don't know. No, I'm not getting irritated, by the way. I'm just telling you that it is.
You should not ridicule opinions.
No, you should not ridicule opinions that because of your limited knowledge, contemporary knowledge. Because contemporary knowledge does not give you a final answer. Give me a final answer. What is the longest duration of pregnancy? Huh? Okay. So actually, but listen. There is something called placental aging, and that happens like 43, somewhere around 43 gestational age. You would be called post-dates if you are past 42 of gestational age. That is post-dates, and then post-dates you really have to get the child out because of placental aging and deterioration of the condition of the child and the well-being. So, somewhere between 43 to 44, there is no exact, sort of empirically proven point where it says that pregnancy may never last beyond this point with all of the modern technology that we have. So somewhere between 43 to 44, someone could come up with a case report at some point that some pregnancy lasted 45 weeks. Well, you can't defy the case report on any scientific basis. Someone will come up with a case report that, in my practice, in our hospital, there was this pregnancy that lasted 45 weeks. Well, tell me who would be able to defy this on empirically proven science. Anyway, so keep in mind, there's nothing illogical about what they said during their time. However, from our cumulative experience, we know that it is extremely unlikely that the pregnancy would last for this long. Therefore, we readjust without being disrespectful. Readjust. That is as easy as this. So, do we have something authentically traceable to Allah and His Messenger? We don't. Do we have, do we have a consensus? We don't. Because the Malikis said 4 one time, 5, 7, indefinite. Some others said indefinite. The Shafi'is said 4. Hanbali said 4 or 5 in 2 different reports of the madhab. Hanafis said 2. Muhammad ibn Abd al-Hakam, the student of Imam Malik, said 1 year only, and Ibn Hazm said 9 months only. So we have all of the spectrum of viewpoints. And Ibn Hazm got a little bit, usually Ibn Hazm gets like particularly assertive, like, some of us. So he's like, how could you dare say that it is 4 years or 2 years when Allah said, وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ 30 شهرا, and so on, and his pregnancy and breastfeeding, or period of breastfeeding, is up to 30 months, and we know that breastfeeding is 2 years, and we know that this or that. So anyway, we have nothing traceable. We have different positions from scholars. We take them in with love, compassion, respect, and stuff, and then we readjust, take from their positions whatever is most plausible. And what was found by laws in Syria and Egypt, I'm familiar with the laws in Syria and Egypt, that's why I quote them a lot, but certainly I think that in many other countries, Muslim countries also, what they chose is 1 year. They chose the position of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Hakam, that the end is 1 year. Keep in mind, in the the precedents in English law, they also chose 1 year, and this was up until recently. Why is it 1 year, even though most of the physicians would argue that it is impossible to last for all the way up to 1 year? This is harim al-hukm. This is a cushion of safety around the ruling. When you want to give a cutoff, you leave a cushion of safety, because you do not want to accuse a woman of impropriety or zina because she gave birth after 45 weeks, even though you cannot prove her zaniya just on the merit of haml being too long for 45 weeks. Okay, so they said, so nowadays we may take 1 year according to the contemporary laws as the end. And the 6 months, the default for the shortest, so 6 months to 1 year would be the period where it would be problematic. If she gave birth more than 6 months after the second marriage and less than 1 year from separation from the first husband, that's murky. And in this case, what did Ibn Qudamah say? And I jumped a little bit because, ومتى وإن فرق بينهما قبل الدخول أتمت عدة الأول وإن كان بعد الدخول بنت على عدة الأول حين دخل بها الثاني واستأنفت العدة.
She did not continue the iddah. She married before that.
But that will also apply here. That will apply here, where she started. Yes, yeah. As far as the haml period, if we were not sure which husband this came from, Ibn Qudamah prescribed what? Al-Qiyafa, and Qiyafa physiognomy. Physiognomy is, I have it in Abjad al-Ulum here, the very detailed definition of physiognomy is an investigative science that studies the physical characteristics of two individuals to assert their ancestry and fidelity of one another. This practice is done by speculation and intuition, not by evidences and certainty. But that was what they had available to them, which tells you how objective they want to be. They're using all of the tools within their capacity to be objective and scientific. Yes, physical features could be telling of ancestry. Some kids, you look at them, they just look exactly like their fathers. And if you have experts who have been tested, and Qiyafa was not just like anything. These people would be tested. He would be like, they would bring a lot of kids and a lot of mothers, and then they would test them, identify who's. And then, he has to pass the test in order for his testimony to be accepted in court. And in this case, the Qa'if is using, to some extent, empirical science, or the physical features, similarities between physical features, and there are subtle physical features that could be more telling than others. We now have DNA testing, so we now could use the DNA testing. Are you smarter than the jurists who used Qiyafa? Absolutely not. They used whatever was available to them. You're using whatever is available to you. You're likely much dumber, you're likely much less smart, I should say. You're likely less smarter than they were. Your knowledge of Islam and science within the context of your, time is much less than theirs. Both ways. Your knowledge of the world and your knowledge of the deen is much less within the context of time. You are one of the worst generations. We are one of the worst generations within the history of our ummah. We're backward, we're behind, they were ahead of us, they were advanced, they were on top of their act, they were leading the world in every aspect, in every regard, in science. They were discovering algebra, and there were Ibn Haytham, Ibn Nafis, Ibn Sina, and so on. And they were smarter than you. They were more competent than you. And I'm not talking about religious or pious. There is no comparison. You're not even competing. You're not even running behind them. You're not running to begin with. We're hardly walking. We're hardly crawling. So you're out of that competition. This is done. Piety, religiosity, sincerity, candidacy, honesty, out of that competition. Then we come to the competition of, the dunya, the world, al-alam, معرفتكم معرفتنا بالعالم وعلومه اتجاهاته الثقافية تياراته الفكرية إلى آخره. Our understanding of the world, the sciences of this world, the cultural currents and all of that stuff. Compare yourselves to them. They were leading the world. In their times, they were leading. And you're trailing. How could you compare yourselves to them in any regard? How could you basically have this little, what did he call it? Smirk on your face or something when you're reading like some statement by Ibn Qudamah that doesn't make sense to you. He was on top of his world. You are, trading under the rug. Anyway, just keep this in mind. So that kid was born after the 1 year in our times, not the 4 years in our times. The kid was born after 1 year after 1 year from the separation from the first, after 6 months from the second, belongs to the second. Less than 6 months we will call the experts and ask them, could it be possible or not possible, and so on. But born after 4 months from, the second, it is from the first. And born in the middle, where it could be from the second or the first, DNA testing. You could also say DNA testing in all cases. Get it over with. Now, whenever a woman gets married during her iddah waiting period, her marriage is void and they must be separated. That is a matter of consensus. If وإن فرق بينهما قبل الدخول أتمت عدة الأول وإن كان بعد الدخول بنت على عدة الأول من حين دخل بها الثاني واستأنفت العدة للثاني وله نكاحها بعد انقضاء العدتين. If they were separated before the consummation, she then finishes the iddah from the first marriage, meaning her iddah from the first marriage is not interrupted by the contract. Not interrupted by the contract. She got a divorce from her first husband, and then she should wait around for 3 months or 3 periods. She got married to the second husband after 2 months. They did not consummate the marriage. That contract will be voided, and then she will finish 1 more month, and that's it. Her iddah is not interrupted. Well, after 2 months, the second scenario is after 2 months, she got married and consummated the marriage. Consummated the marriage. And then they stayed married for 2 months, and then he divorced her. What should she do? She will have to do 2 iddahs here, because she consummated the marriage with the second one. Her first iddah did not finish. She got married after 2 months only.
She needs to continue 1 month.
Absolutely. She finishes off 1 month, from which time separation from the second. Separation from the second husband. Then she starts her iddah from the first. And that's according to the majority. Imam Abu Hanifa said they overlap. The majority will give 2 distinct iddahs, one after the other, without overlapping. So the majority said, she separated from the second husband today. Now she needs to finish the first iddah, which was 1 month was left of it. Because she finished 2, she needs to build on this, finish off 1. After she finishes off that 1 month, she starts her iddah from the second husband. Imam Abu Hanifa said they both overlap. The position of the majority is supported by like a hadith or an athar in Muwatta from Umar radiallahu anhu. And where he prescribed that she observes both iddahs sequentially. After this, can she marry the second husband or not? Yes. Yes, according to. Yeah, according to Ibn Qudamah, it is yes, but it's a controversial matter. It's a controversial matter. The statement of Umar itself actually says no. The statement of Umar that we are using here, huh? Yeah. Okay. عمر رضي الله عنه said أيما امرأة نكحت في عدتها ولم يدخل بها الذي تزوجها فرق بينهما ثم اعتدت بقية عدتها من زوجها الأول وكان خاطبا من الخطاب وإن دخل بها فرق بينهما ثم اعتدت بقية عدتها من زوجها الأول ثم اعتدت من الآخر ولم ينكحها أبدا. At the end of Umar's statement here, which you will find in your document, and he, the second man, may never marry her if they consummated the marriage during the iddah of the first man. And this is not from the Prophet, but the reasoning here is what? من استعجل شيئا قبل أوانه عوقب بحرمانه. Whoever makes a haste, whoever sort of makes a haste in at claiming or realizing something or taking in something, before its due time will be punished by sort of deprivation or from it, or whatever you want to say. Like if you're making a haste, if you're getting married before the due time, then you're going to be punished by not being able to get married again. That man who consummated the marriage with that woman, despite the fact that she was in her period, will not be able to get together again. And that's the position of Imam Malik and a variant position in the Hanbali Mazhab. According to Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi'i and the popular position of Imam Ahmad, they will be able to get married again. And the reasoning here is that this is too huge of a matter to base it on anything short of a clear nas. Permanent prohibition, التحريم المؤبد, permanent prohibition is too big of a matter to base it on ta'leel, ratiocination, without dalil or an evidence from the text of Revelation. And that's the stronger position. It is a too big of a matter to base it on ta'leel without a dalil, to base it on ratiocination, logical, exercise, without the clear-cut dalil from the Quran and the Sunnah. And we already went over the scenario where, so basically when she starts to have the doubt here, we went over the scenario of the pregnancy happening at different times. The same will apply to the scenario where she got married here and then she became pregnant here. Then we will have the same problem and the same divisions. Is it from the first or the second? The only difference is that if she got married after her iddah ended, she did not commit anything haram. She is not a sinner. She started to have the doubts here. So we're talking about ahkam wad'iyya or taklifiyya here. We're talking about declaratory laws. We're not talking about ahkam taklifiyya, which are basically ahkam al-wad'iyya are the declaratory laws. The ahkam al-taklifiyya would be translated as what? Huh?
I forgot how we did in Boston.
Yeah. Anyway, al-hukm al-taklifi is where it is addressing it is requiring the mukallaf to do or abstain, to do something or abstain from it. Declaratory laws, they're not requiring you to do or abstain, but they're telling you if something happens, then what is it valid, is it invalid, is this, that. It's not a requirement of action or abstention. Okay, I had actually 2 or 3 different translations for taklifi, hukm taklifi, and I was just blanking out on them. Anyway, questions? Yeah.
Same case of the widow where the iddah is 4 months and 10 days. What happens in a scenario where the iddah, the time, the beginning of the iddah is forgotten? For any example, say the widow goes, let's say for 3 months, or let's say she goes for 4 months and she has 10 days left. But at that period, she completely forgot when it started. Is there like a default that she has to start over?
She forgot when her husband died or divorced her?
Any scenario, yeah. If something happens in that way, say the time frame is lost a long time ago, depression, whatever the case is.
Moonsighting issues.
Whatever it is. The beginning of the iddah is lost. How does that happen? How does she fulfill the last? Does she assume?
Okay. تبني على اليقين وإن يتعذر اليقين تبني على غلبة الظن فإن غلبة الظن تحل محل اليقين في الأحكام الشرعية. So she has to base it on certainty. If certainty is unattainable, then she base it on the preferable conjecture, غلبة الظن. Because preferable conjecture takes the place of yaqeen or certainty in religious matters, in religious rulings. No.
This
slightly off topic, right? But the issue of when we're trying to set rulings, that the ulama would put like a cushion zone to stay away from, dangerous areas, yeah? I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, but just in general, I had two scenarios back to back. Like I had one father bring me his kid like this, say, tell him his haircut is haram, right? Because the Prophet said you can't shave the side of your head. So I'm like, but his head isn't shaved, there's still hair there. So that's not what the hadith is talking about. Perhaps I can't talk. And another scenario also in the past 2 weeks, a brother grabbed his younger brother in the household that I was in, dragged him into the bathroom, shaved a lot of his head off because he felt like, I'm like, guys, you need to just calm down. This is not necessarily what the hadith is talking about. So when exactly should we put the cut off for that? Because it's just always coming up these days, right?
Yeah. So basically, this is a perfect scenario where the ulama they felt that there is this area where it does not meet the definition of haram. First of all, the basis of this whole thing is what? Is Nahi Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam al-Qaza. This was reported by Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam forbade qaza, which is shaving part of the head and not all of the head. And in some other report, the Prophet said, فَلْيَحْلِقْهُ كُلَّهُ وَلْيَتْرُكُهُ كُلَّهُ. Let him shave it all or leave it all. So qaza was defined by the scholars as basically shaving part and leaving part. So what if you shorten part and leave part? This will not meet the exact definition of qaza that has been mentioned in the hadith. But in this case, what if you're shortening too much that it is almost there, but it is not there? Then you're getting so close to qaza that has been prohibited by the Prophet ﷺ. And I would imagine that the scholars of the past will always lump this category under akrahu, I hate it. Because you're circumventing the intent of the legislator without clear defiance of the order or the prohibition. The order or the prohibition here is to avoid shaving part of the head and leaving part. That is the prohibition. But if you shorten part of the head too much that it looks almost like shaven or very close, then what you're doing is basically يوشك أن يقع فيه.
Casting the net and collecting.
Huh?
You're casting the net and collecting them.
No, it's not about casting the net. It's about coming close to the border. كالراعي يرعى حول الحمى يوشك أن يقع فيه. Like a shepherd who is grazing his herd very close to the sanctuary. So just at the border. And in all honesty, there is the concept that you should stay away from the lions, provide a cushion of safety. There is another concept that you should not deal with the Sharia as sort of the merchant of Venice. You should not deal with the Sharia on a technical level. You should really respect the spirit of the Sharia. The spirit of Sharia here is to avoid the change of Allah's creation. But someone may say that I will shorten it too much here, like here. I will not shave it, I'll just make it like 1 or 0.5, and then I'll leave it all the way up here. And that is not qaza because the Prophet said shaving part and leaving part. But did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create us to look like this? What if someone decided to do the opposite? To shorten it so like down to 1 here and leave it, or here, or here, or here.
They can actually exist.
Huh?
They can naturally exist though.
Well, if that is a natural, if it is a natural development, then that is fine. But what I'm trying to say, why are you trying to depart from the genuine, natural way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us? There is really no good purpose for this. And unless you really deal with Allah on a more, like, sort of, on a less technical basis, more genuine, more loving, more compassionate basis, like compassion for the Sharia and the intents of the Sharia and the wisdom of the Sharia and the spirit of the Sharia, you should expect that you'll get in trouble, and you should expect that Allah will be watching this also. Like, people that are so engaged in technicalities will be treated as they deserve by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But full submission is when you submit to the wording and the implication and the intent and the higher wisdom and the objective. That is one discussion. The other discussion is that you should not be always chasing trends. You should, and that may be even more important. Like, as a Muslim, you should not be chasing the different trends, because otherwise you'll be following people that will change the way you look, the way you dress on daily basis. You know, every time a trend comes up, then we all feel the urge or the need to chase it and to look like whatever you saw in this magazine or on this website or in this movie, which is really important. Like, we should really, like, and also to value sort of our contribution to the world. Our contribution to the world should be like bigger than this, more substantive, more valuable than this. We should contribute to the world through our hard work, integrity, diligence, perfection. You know, these are more meaningful things. Whether you're contributing to the material civilization or the spiritual civilization of the world, both contributions are valid and good, but they should be more substantive. One more question and we'll be done. Yes? There was some hand raised.
I don't want to go into it. Still, I realize it was a technicality and it'll be just absurd to ask.
You have to ask now.
Well, I had one question.
Well, that is suspense. Moody, what was your question? What was your technical question?
No, it wasn't technical. There was a second one was technical. What was the illah in the hadith? It might have been technical. Okay. What was the illah in the hadith about qasam?
Okay.
Like, is there like a certain situation happened with the Prophet ﷺ where he stated that
it is departure from the natural creation. Departure. Qaza, shaving part of the head and not the whole head, is departure. In addition to this, concept of justice in Islam is extremely valuable. Where the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from wearing like a sandal in one foot and not the other. Where the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from sitting part in the sun, in part in the shade, so that you're not doing injustice. Like, you want to be always balanced and just. So if you want to sit in the shade, sit all in the shade, all in the sun. Unless, like you don't sit like unless you want to keep your head in the shade and your feet in the sun for some purpose. But it is the concept of justice all the time. And that is the same thing. It's just like the balance, justice. In addition to the preservation of the natural look. Allah made us look a certain way. Don't just mess with it. That would be that. وإياكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.